The Hebrew word chayil, often translated in English simply as strength, is a word of weight, of muscle, of resonance. It thunders onto the stage of Scripture almost 240 times, and every time it appears, it carries a charge. In the Torah, it marches at the head of armies. Pharaoh's host is called his cheil, his force, swallowed whole in the sea. The leaders of Israel summon their anshei Chayil, their men of war, men of steel and dust and discipline. In the prophets, the word still rings with battle. Gideon is greeted as a gibbor Chayil, a mighty man of valor, a title that carries the weight of swords and the courage of standing when others flee. But the word begins to stretch. With David, his men of Chayil are not only fighters, but retainers of honor and stature, men of loyalty and reputation. By the time we reach the writings, Chayil has expanded far beyond the battlefield. Ruth is named an eshet Chayil, a woman of noble strength, whose dignity is as solid as an army. Proverbs sings the same phrase in its final chapter, painting not a soldier, but a woman whose industry, wisdom, and faithfulness clothe her in lasting honor. And elsewhere Chayil turns again, pointing to wealth, to resources, to the substance that sustains a household or a nation. Beneath this surface lies a more dynamic and complex energy, one that includes not only capacity for war or mass, but also generative force, spiritual orientation, and structured will. The three letters that compose the root, chet, yod, and lamed, function not merely as phonemes, but as symbolic elements that together encode a deeper logic of power and potential. This diversity of use is not accidental but constitutive. Chayil is a word that gathers multiple registers of strength into one field of meaning. Any symbolic or structural reading of the root must therefore attend to these textual anchors, recognizing how context drives which dimension of strength comes forward in a given passage. Chayil can refer to a soldier, a fighting force, or military discipline, but just as readily to moral stature, earned wealth, or inner excellence. To arm or enlist in Hebrew carries more than a physical act. It refers to preparing or aligning one's inner structure to serve. The verb forms that come from this root express the activation of a hidden strength, whether by joining a group as enlisting or organizing that group into a force as militarizing. The presence of Chayil is found not only in armies, but also in those who possess uprightness and discipline. The term applies to those whose virtue takes a stand, individuals who uphold order, demonstrate courage, or contribute value. Thus, Chayil reflects a pattern of inner form that becomes externally effective, where structured power is shaped not merely for domination, but to serve purposes aligned with justice, honor, or divinity. Chet, the eighth letter of the Hebrew alphabet, is a letter of containment and becoming. Its form, two uprights joined by a roofline, suggests a doorway or archway. Unlike a wall that closes, it is a boundary that makes passage possible, an enclosure that both protects and invites. This visual symbolism aligns with its phonetic character, a guttural, breathy sound pressed from the throat. Chet feels like vitality meeting limit, the breath that animates life contained by form. This makes it inseparable from the notion of chai, life, with which it shares its root. The life force is not squandered into chaos, but preserved, gestated, and made ready for emergence. As a symbol, Chet carries three interlocking resonances. First, it is boundary, the enclosure without which no form can be sustained. Second, it is breath, the inner current preserved within the frame, the vital pulse that sustains growth. And third, it is threshold, the liminal place where potential passes outward into manifestation. Rabbinic tradition amplifies this with numerology. As the eighth letter, Chet points to what surpasses natural cycles, the movement from creation, 7, into transformation, 8. Circumcision on the eighth day embodies this covenantal passage, life defined by boundary, yet open to transcendence. In Chet, we encounter the paradox of strength. To enclose is not to stifle, but to preserve the conditions of becoming. Yod, the 10th letter, is the smallest in form and yet among the most powerful in meaning. Written as little more than a suspended point, it appears insubstantial, yet in Jewish thought it is the seed of all letters, the elemental stroke from which writing unfolds. In this compression lies its potency, the tiniest mark bearing infinite potential. Its sound, the fluid Y that slips easily into vowels, occupies a liminal space, neither fixed consonant nor full vowel, echoing its symbolic role as the bridge between unformed potential and manifest expression. Its very name means hand, the organ of shaping and doing, the medium by which intention moves into action. From this nexus emerge three core meanings. Yod is spark, the flash of energy at the beginning of an act, the first gesture that sets motion in train. It is seed, the compressed germ in which the entire pattern of growth already resides. And it is intention, the act of will that directs raw possibility toward a chosen outcome. Mystical tradition amplifies this role. Yod is the first letter of the divine name Yah-Baboch, the initial point from which ineffable presence unfolds. Its numerical value, 10, signifies completion and ordered wholeness. The 10 utterances of creation in Genesis, the 10 commandments at Sinai. Yod thus embodies the paradox of smallness, the tiniest point yet capable of carrying the entire cosmos in compressed form, a reminder that in the Hebrew imagination, beginnings are never trivial. Lamed, the 12th letter, is immediately recognizable. Unlike any other, it rises above the writing line, its tall ascender stretching upward. This vertical reach marks it as a letter of aspiration and guidance, a sign of movement toward wisdom, of energies oriented beyond themselves. Its root, lamad, to learn or to teach, confirms this. Lamd is the letter of instruction, of discipline that elevates. Its shape evokes the shepherd's staff, a tool at once supportive and directive. The rod that steadies, corrects, and guides without crushing. Authority here is not brute force, but orientation, the power to lead by pointing the way. The meanings converge into three primary functions. Lamed is staff, the steadying support that provides direction and balance. It is learning, the curve of instruction by which instinct matures into knowledge and knowledge into wisdom. And it is leadership, the capacity to gather, orient, and elevate, organizing scattered energies into purposeful motion. In mystical tradition, its numerical value, 30, signals maturity, the age of priestly service and the season of seasoned study. Rising above the line, Lamd embodies both the student's reach toward heaven and the descent of wisdom into human form. It is at once the letter of ascent and of grounding, the aspiration that connects human striving with divine orientation. Taken together, these three letters, Chet as boundary breadth threshold, Yod as spark seed intention, and Lamed as staff learning leadership, provide not just a word, but a structural logic of strength. Chayil is not a single note, but a chord woven from containment, initiation, and guidance. Each letter carries multiple resonances, and it is by drawing on those resonances in different configurations that the word gathers its extraordinary range of meaning across the scriptures, from armies and wealth to virtue and wisdom. The integration of Chet, Yod, and Lamed represents a unity of containment, spark, and guidance, a force that is alive, intelligent, and aligned. The force expressed in Chayil is not a singular thing. Its inner logic unfolds differently depending on how its parts are arranged and activated. In certain systems, strength emerges from mutual reinforcement. In others, it is the result of hierarchy, convergence, or self-replication. The three letters, Chet, Yod, and Lamd, each carry multiple potential meanings, and under different dynamics, one of those meanings comes forward while the others fall back. When we examine the structure of this word through the lens of formal triadic systems, we see not just one model of strength, but many. Each of the following 11 paragraphs reflects a unique way in which the components of Chayil can interact to generate a distinct logic of power. In the first case, where strength is born through mutual presence and alignment, Chet represents the breath of life, the vitality that pulses through and sustains all things in relationship. Yod becomes will, the internal commitment to remain in right relation. Lamed expresses orientation, a shared direction that keeps members of the system tuned to each other. Here, strength is not imposed or asserted. It is maintained through reciprocal existence. Each part sustains the others, and the system endures by virtue of its inward coherence. Where strength grows through continuous amplification, each part pushing the next forward in a loop, Chet serves as potential, the inner energy that seeks expression. Yod is the hand that puts that energy into action, the operative agent that initiates. Lamed is guidance, the outward expansion and leadership that the action generates. This creates a circuit in which the release of energy results in greater capacity, and the system reinforces itself by feeding back what it produces. Strength here is compounding momentum. When strength unfolds through strict cause and effect, Chet becomes the boundary that defines where something begins or ends. It sets the frame in which events can occur. Yod is the seed that initiates motion within those bounds, the cause whose effects are necessary and traceable. Lamed becomes direction, marking the final outcome toward which things move. In this structure, strength is the clarity of ordered progression, where beginnings are known and ends are shaped by what precedes them. Sometimes strength does not travel linearly, but moves through leaps, emerging in ways that bypass step-by-step construction. In this configuration, Chet holds hidden potential, an interior stillness not yet manifest. Yod is the spark that unexpectedly ignites that potential, revealing something new. Lamed appears as learning, the understanding that crystallizes after the leap has occurred. In these systems, strength emerges as insight, often in sudden clarity, as concealed energy becomes active through revelation. Strength can also take the form of nested inclusion, where smaller elements build toward a whole that contains and dignifies them. Here, Chet is life, the animating force that begins the sequence. Yod is the seed that grows from life, replicating its core. Lamed becomes leadership, the state that arises when growth reaches maturity. In this mode, strength is not in exclusion but in integration, where each stage retains and elevates what came before. In configurations where strength depends on binding multiple parts into a held unity, Chet functions again as boundary, not to isolate but to contain what is joined. Yod acts as the hand, the joining force that maintains contact. Lamed is trajectory, the shared path that the joined elements now follow. Strength here is the product of union, sustained alignment that holds tension not in conflict but in productive relation. When strength takes the form of harmony, produced by interdependent roles, the letters play yet another set of functions. Chet is life, the shared essence that moves through each participant. Yod is intention, the mutual tuning that ensures resonance between them. Lamed becomes wisdom, the result that rings true when all elements are in balance. This form of strength is not dominance but consonance, a balance of forces that yields clarity. In systems that aim toward convergence, where all strands lead toward mutual integration, Chet becomes source, the original field from which all paths extend. Yod is the hand, drawing connections across difference. Lamed is again learning, now in the sense of recognizing the shared order among what once seemed separate. Strength here is in the weaving, bringing multiple threads into one coherent fabric. Strength can also arise under conditions when something is only made possible by the presence of specific elements. In this model, Chet represents the boundary, the threshold that must be crossed. Yod is the seed, the potential that will only activate under the right terms. Lamed becomes form, the influence or shape that emerges when conditions are met. In this case, strength is precise. It appears only when the system is aligned in exact configuration. There are times when strength is found in the act of association itself. In this structure, chet is space, the frame in which connections become possible. Yod is choice, the will that selects one thread over another. Lamed is motion, the direction that arises from chosen bonds. Strength here is relational and selective. It is built not from what simply exists, but from what is chosen to be joined. Finally, strength emerges through integration, when diverse elements are brought under a single unifying principle. In this highest form, chet becomes latent multiplicity, the many possibilities held within. Yod is the spark that activates and organizes those potentials. Lamed is leadership, the guiding principle that gives them purpose and direction. Here, strength is not in fragmentation, but in union. It is the fire of will, shaped by vision, that draws scattered forces into coherence and makes them whole. The symbolic patterns of chet, yod, and lamed help us see Chayil not as a monolithic term, but as a dynamic structure of strength that can manifest in different ways. Yet it is crucial to avoid collapsing all these meanings into one. Chayil does not simultaneously mean army, wealth, and virtue in every verse. Instead, each occurrence activates only part of its potential range. The task of interpretation, then, is to attend to contextual signals, the literary setting, the surrounding vocabulary, and the broader narrative. A battle scene will naturally highlight cheil as disciplined force. A wisdom text will draw forward its moral dimension. A genealogical or economic description may emphasize its sense of wealth or capacity. The symbolic frameworks explored here offer a set of lenses rather than a single definition. They illuminate the internal logic of the word, how boundaries, will, and direction can combine to generate strength in different registers. By being aware of these underlying patterns, interpreters are better equipped to discern the specific meaning Chayil takes in any given passage. In this way, Chayil serves as a reminder that strength in the Hebrew imagination is never one-dimensional. It is always structured, contextual, and oriented toward purpose, just as in life.